As we continue our exploration of posthumanism, let us recap a little bit. We have already looked at the context in which posthumanism emerges as a critical school, and we were talking about, in the first lesson of this particular week, the role that certain technologies have played and how that set of technologies, from artificial intelligence to, say, cloning and genetic engineering, have been influential in reconceptualizing, rethinking our notions of the human. We also came up with a provisional definition of the posthuman as one who co-becomes with not only other life forms, but also with the non-living. We also made the argument that for posthumanists, our sense of being, our sense of who we are, can also have the potential of being modified when, say, our physiological, anatomical, but also moral and emotional abilities are modified, so that theoretically speaking, we might produce better humans with more empathy and altruistic features, and who are more compassionate and less prone to violence. Much of critical posthumanist thought actually originates in the critique of conventional or traditional humanism. And this is the intellectual background from which posthumanism emerges in the 1990s. The human is traditionally taken as a self-aware subject, right? Conscious of the fact of being. This self-aware subject is marked by traditional thinking, intelligence, someone who's capable of defining a plot of action depending on quote unquote his, and we will have reasons to put the his within quotes. So defining a plot of action depending on his needs, desires, wishes and abilities, and executes this plot. So not only does the traditional version of the human have a set of desires and ambitions, but has the ability to put those into practice, which is what I mean by saying executes his plot. In this process, the human produces history. This is one of the key intellectual, cultural developments of the modern world. And what I just described is the traditional view of the human as defined by humanism, as a school of thought, as a philosophical position, and as an ideology. The human is this self-aware subject, a rational subject who plans a plot of action for his life, emphasis on the his, based on needs and desires and abilities and potential, and then sets out to execute this plot. The point is, the human has traditionally been assumed as male and universal. This traditional humanist position, humanist value or valorization of the male as the universal human, is the first point at which traditional humanism is critiqued. So our second set of contexts for the study of the rise of posthumanism as a critical school is the criticism, the critique of traditional humanisms and the humanistic values. As I just said, the traditional human has been assumed to be male and universal. This male and universal human is treated as being in the singular. It is the human. Right? We always refer to it as the human. We don't say a human, we say the human. And this human has a set of features. What are those features? Rationality, autonomy, and agency. Rationality, because since the Enlightenment, that is roughly the last decades the last half of the 18th century in Europe, this rationality, which is supposedly the trademark of the human, positions the human above all other life forms. Because rational thinking, reason with a capital R, is believed to be the characteristic, the virtue, the quality of only the human form. Then there is autonomy. So there are three key features: rationality, autonomy, and agency. Rationality, like I just said, is about the human assumed to be, believed to be a creature of reason with a capital R, and whose entire life is driven by reason, and it is therefore something that sets the human above other life forms, because the other life forms are not as rational as if they are rational at all. The second, like I said, is autonomy. By autonomy, we mean the human who is self-contained, not dependent, has a body, has a physiological mechanism or set of mechanisms, has a rational mind, which gives him, emphasis again on him, autonomy, which also means the human is separated from the world, being autonomous. Finally, the human has agency. Remember the early definition of humanism, and the human is marked as taken to be as a self-aware subject who can plan a plot, define a plot of action, and eventually execute this plot. The ability to execute his desires, his ambitions, is agency. Agency is the ability to put into practice what has hitherto been just a set of dreams, ideals, ambitions, and desires. Humanism posits and theorizes this human as the center of the world. That this creature who is rational, who has autonomy, and who possesses agency is the center of the world. This is a troubling philosophical position for posthumanism. And the critiques of such a position, such a humanism, question three principal features. Is the human really the center of the universe? Is the so-called autonomous human mind really autonomous? Does the agency to perform the tasks and fulfill the ambitions and desires really come from this autonomy? So the three principal questions. The notion of the human as the center of the universe, is that so? Does the human mind really possess autonomy? And is the agency of the individual proceeding from this autonomy? The universal human, as the critiques suggest, has been constructed by excluding several classes, people, groups from the category of the human itself. Traditional European humanism excluded Jews, slaves, homosexuals, women as not quite human. So the universal human, the supposedly human figure that stands for the entire universe of humanity, actually did not include all the races, all the ethnic groups, and all the different identities. Homosexuals, the mad, the sick, the slaves, the Jews, and of course women were positioned outside the category of the woman, outside the category of the human, because it's only by excluding those can you define what the pure human is. So you position the woman, the madman, the Jew, the slave as not human. So how do you define yourself? You say, I am human because I am not like them. I am human because I am not woman, I am not the Jew, I am not the slave. Those are treated as less than human. Then, crucially, you rank the human as above the animal, where animal is the same as nature within quotes, and the nature, like the animal, exists only to serve the male human. Remember what we said at the earlier lesson, that humanism has a certain instrumental view of the world, and this is it. You treat the other humans, the quote-unquote less than human, you treat the animal as existing to serve the human who's a male. The traditional humanisms of European origin were linked to Europe's imperial domination of the world. So there is a very close link between the way in which Europe marched across the world and took continents and governed them and exterminated the natives, but all in the name of something else, which we know is often called the civilizational mission, etc. But the location of humanism is to be seen within the context of imperial rule, imperial domination, because once you reached the colony, you were able to transform the native into workers or slaves because you said they are not human or they are not human enough. So that is why humanism has been critiqued, that there are very serious and very severe problems with how humanism looks at not just the human, but to those who are classified as not human, those who have been excluded from the category itself of the human. And there are some very crucial critiques, and we'll look at a couple of them. We will not be covering the entire range of anti-humanist thought. Let's take the most powerful one of these critiques of humanism, and that would be feminisms. Feminisms and their critiques of humanism more or less argue along three lines. Remember what we said, that the human is a category that has been constructed by excluding several other people as not quite human. The feminist critiques argue that gender identities are not natural because categories such as the masculine man or the feminine women are acts of social naming. They are social acts which construct those identities. Which means, effectively, when we see a body as male or female, we are viewing that body through a prism, through a mediating mechanism where we already have some preconceived notions as to what a female or male body ought to be. Where we have some idea, where we are already classified in our heads that a male body will be like this, a female body will be like this. So there are preconceived notions, preconceived frames. That is what the feminists argue, that when we see a body as male or female, we are seeing it from within this framework. And we assume they are fixed or natural categories. They are not. They are not natural categories. They have been made to look natural. They have been made to be seen as natural, though they are not. It is only by creating the category of the non-human that the human emerges, right? It's only by constructing the category of the non-human homosexuals or Jews or slaves that you can construct the pure white man as universal human. So what we are looking at here is a clear creation of binaries, right? Of binaries where some fall on this side, some on the other. For feminists, these are not fixed or natural categories. They are socially constructed categories. The relationships between the genders are actually based on a certain power distribution. Who has the upper hand? Who has more power? Who is more dominant? The male, obviously, right? because the social construction of female as weak or powerless is a way of making people believe that they are weak and powerless. In critical theory parlance, it's called discourse. Discourse is language in operation, and when you construct a frame through which you view these bodies, you will see them as male or female, because that is how we have been trained to see. That is the lens through which we see. And that's the crucial part, the lens, the framework. Catherine Belsey argued that in humanism, or for humanism, man is the origin and source of meaning. Man is where it all begins. So, for feminist critiques of humanism, the very idea of identity is not of a solitary, self-contained, autonomous identity. For the feminists, identity is multiple, fractured, relational. More importantly, identity is embedded in power structures. It's not a free-floating thing. It's embedded in power structures, which we can broadly call social relations. So whether it is the greater amount of wage given to the male laborer versus the less money given to the female laborer as wage, or any of those, we exist in a system of power relations which depend upon, but which also determine the nature of our perception of genders, right? The feminists also have a serious problem with the division of non-human and human, or human culture versus nature. The reason is, for many of the feminists, the non-human and human can't be separated. They can't be leading a completely autonomous, separate spheres of existence, because our lives are entangled. Remember the word I have used in the first lesson. It's a key word because much of posthumanism uses the term entangled. So we cannot say that, oh, the human is autonomous, coherent, and independent, because humanity has co-evolved with other non-human creatures and we lead mutually dependent lives. Further, posthumanism rejects that the rationality alone is the measure of the human. That first, that all humans are rational, and rational in the same way, of course, and that rationality marks the, shall we say, apotheosis, the climactic moment of human evolution. The posthumanists are troubled by this, especially the feminist variety, because are we saying we are creatures only of rational thought? Are we saying that the mind, which is supposedly the seat of reason, is the only important thing, the only important organ in the human form, in the human body? The answer is clearly no. It is not the sole organ in the human body, because several other organs exist who take care of what we do. So we cannot, according to the feminists, insist that rationality is the sole measure of the human. Not the sole measure. It can be one of the measures, but it's not the only way of measuring the human. For example, isn't emotion a part of the human? I mean, all of us know yes. Why do we then give primacy to rationality? Finally, feminist critics reject the dominance of technoscience, which for them brings back capitalism and patriarchy in another way, where the machine and the man, and here it is clearly man, the machine and the man are part of one assemblage, and that assemblage exploits the woman laborer, the woman whatever it might be. In short, technoscience is the merger of patriarchy with capitalism and technology. And for the feminists, this is a serious problem. So to summarize, feminist perspectives on posthumanism, the emphasis is on lived rationality, by which I meant that you live because you are related to other life forms, because you're part of other life forms. They emphasize multitudes, not solo soul creatures, but the multitudes. They believe in multidirectionality rather than linearity. Life doesn't work like this along a straight line. It's all tangled up. It all comes from many different directions. Instead of having a binary called nature versus culture, they, following the work of Donna Haraway, that is, by they I mean the feminist critiques, use the term nature culture as one word, that they are part of one continuum. And there are differential modes of belonging. They are not similar. The next critique we are going to look at is critical race studies, which is also connected to several concerns in post-colonialism. Critical race studies notes that not only is the black man in the colonial age not a citizen, he's not even deemed to be human. The black woman is just a body for labor and reproduction. So critical race studies notes the fact that, quote unquote, the universal human of European Enlightenment never included the black man or the black woman. Remember what we said, that the human is a construct. Then it notes the fact that biological theories of race theory emerges from the late 18th and through the 19th century. It enabled the treatment of the black races as animals, not quite human. In the age of humanism, there is a link, like I already mentioned, between Enlightenment humanism and the rise of colonial empires, of European empires all over the world, which means there is a link between how we viewed the black man, the rise of slave economy, the plantations, the great colonial expeditions to what they call the New World, and the assumption that there is only one universal human, and that human goes out to conquer, to rule, to dominate. So for the critical race theorists, there is a problem with this, right? And now, of course, in the age of artificial beings and robots, we have a new set of beings to address. Should we create non-living machines? Following from that, should we create non-human life forms which somehow seem to reproduce, to replicate the master-slave relationship? Should we create artificial beings to take care of us? Should we create a new servant class of beings that will take care of us, that will be our servants? Remember, that's how the black race was treated. The blacks, the Negroes as they used to be called for a very long time, over centuries, were shipped from Africa to serve on the plantations, to serve the masters who were white Europeans and who had set up plantations, and the working classes, the laborers, would come from the other races. What is their purpose in life? To serve us. So in the age of artificial beings, and you have texts like Machines Like Me, Ian McEwan's novel, or Kazuo Ishiguro's Clara and the Sun, and its earlier version, not an earlier version, an earlier novel like Never Let Me Go, you have to start thinking about whether the non-human, or by which we mean non-human animal or non-human robot, should they be created as our servants? Should they be created as meant to serve us? So, posthumanism argues that the human, within quotes, emerges as a result of the environment. We are a set of possibilities. There is no bounded, limited, autonomous self. There is no sovereign self. Posthumanism asks, what is human in the age of biotech? In the age of genocide? It studies how particular bodies remain placed outside. Immigrants, women, minorities. Some bodies are monstrous. Posthumanism, as you can see, calls for a relational view of humans. We shall see more in subsequent lessons.